Well, welcome everybody who is listening or watching, depending upon how we do it. We're not on the air yet at IBGR, and the reason for that is we have hard stops and hard entries in terms of when we can get on the air and when we can't, just like any other radio station. So I'm just doing this in case you're joining us, and this is also for the file. Is that this is the last week of our soft launch on this. We haven't promoted it on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter at all because we're getting all the kinks out of the system, I guess you could say. And so we're looking to broadcast to a couple other platforms, and that will be next week. So hopefully that will be the hard launch. We've got most of all of the issues worked out. Now, just a kind of a note to everybody out there is that uh, and this has nothing really to do with radio or video. It has to do with the introduction of any new product or services that we heartily recommend. I do, and we do at the network, that you engage with soft launches in that process. And a soft launch is basically you go and you test it out. Now, the first one, I had some of our hosts on, not on the show, but listening and watching for some feedback, which went pretty well. And then based upon that, we did a couple other webinars. And so what we're doing in this series is we're testing out a brand new format because part of our design for the radio station now going back 2 years, and just to give you a note, is that IBGR was the outcrop of a business decision that we were making with a terrestrial radio station. At the time, I was the station manager for WNTW in Chester, Virginia, and our intention at the time was, as we were growing the station, to take it international and begin to not only syndicate the shows that we had part of our terrestrial station at NTW, but introduce new shows and to do this globally. However, I didn't own the station, it was owned by the Salem Network. And after we'd made it profitable, they decided that they wanted to sell it, which was their intention to begin with. I don't come from radio. I'm come from business consulting, which is gets me into the story of IBGR, is that we thought that we could find a way of redefining how training, consulting, and coaching was delivered. And there's a lot of people doing it, so it's not like we're absolute pioneers into it. It was a matter of we were trying a different approach and with a different mix. And I haven't found any competitors out there. And by the way, if you want to leave in a comment, people doing what we're doing, I'd be happy to take a look at them because we've really been aggressive in looking at other people, not being able to find anybody else in the industry, either in the radio industry or the video industry or in the consulting industry, who have tried to marry the three together. So the design around all our radio shows is to be a lot of consulting and a little coaching and a little training. That's why we have show notes to every show. That's why when we put a host on the air, the hosts are all subject matter experts on the topic they discuss, and they're all business owners. So this is not an academic program we're running. We're not looking at degrees or anything like that. If you want to go to college, go to college. And I'm not putting it down. I got plenty of degrees. If that interests you, it doesn't interest me anymore. All right, we're approaching the time now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to switch and I'm going to have some background noise, I guess you could call it, and that background noise is. I do that to figure out where we are. So we are now in the. We are now in the um, radio. We're into, excuse me, into the. I got too many things going on here. We're now in the spot phase. The first 2 minutes, the first 2 to 2.5 minutes of all our programming, just like any radio station, is for commercials. And so that's what we're doing there. All right. So we're going to be going live on the radio shortly. I don't know where that came from. Here we are. All right. So what we're doing here now is we're queuing up, and so what I have is a timer running, telling me we have 15-minute segments. Of the 15-minute segments, I have uh, I have 12 about 12 minutes and 30 seconds. All right, I'll turn that off for a second. All right, so we're going to be going live on the radio station, and then we're going to roll. Now, what you have in the comment areas is where to go. And I would recommend that you go to the website, which I'm going to be talking about shortly. And when you get there, you're going to be looking for a category called Season 12 Customers. This is Season 12 here at the network, and customers is the topic we're taking today. But I'll explain all that shortly as we approach our start time. Let's check it again. Yeah, I'm getting tired of listening to that guy. I got to get somebody else doing the commercials. All right, so here we are. We're going to be about 15 seconds before we go live on the network. And then from then, we'll be doing 12 and a half minute segments. And then in between, I'll stay on and do a little talking about what's going on. And just so you know, I'm the only host without a studio engineer. Okay. Oh, one more. Okay, here we go. I'll start with the bumper music if I get it to open up. Here we are. And we will connect and go live. Welcome to IBGR, the International Business Growth Radio Network, currently heard in 183 countries around the world. My name is William Eastman, and today we are on track 3. And let me explain that for all of you that are new to our series. What we've done is we've been looking at the economy, and of course, most of you know that we run our own what will we call that? Our own news program that comes on live at 4:30 Eastern Time, Monday through Friday. And what we're focusing on is the economy. We've been talking some e-commerce. We've been talking about some crypto as a method of taking in additional sales transactions, not an investment. But what has happened here is that I've been through in my business career. We can debate about whether it is or not. That's up to you. I believe we're in one, and I believe it's not over and it's going to get worse, but that's a story for a different day. But what we decided to do is how do we help the small business owner who has really, there's no reason for the business owner to take blame for what's going on in the economy, even if they made bad bad political decisions in terms of who they voted for. So we said, okay, the economy is a given, it's not a controllable. And so in business, one of the first rules are control the controllables. So the controllable I have in this particular case is how do I respond to the economy? So what we did is we put together a 3-track program, which we are about halfway through right now. So on Mondays, track 1 is own your numbers, and it's all about finance to get you on top of your numbers because you're going to be making improvements in the business, both on the cost side, which is what we do on Tuesday as we have a conversation about operations, and then you're going to make improvements on the revenue side, which we are doing today. And so winning in difficult times is the name that we gave all 3 of these tracks. Track 3, which is today, is our customer series. And on track 3, what is that all about? That's holding your best accounts because our experience is new sales coming in from new customers are going to be, from the cost of those sales are going to go up. And more than likely, the customer is going to be buying your least profitable offer, the one with the lowest margin on it. And so the challenge that you're going to have is where is my revenue going to come from, given the fact that people are going to buy less? And what we learned over the years is holding your best accounts, your most profitable customers. If you can hold them, you can get through this. And so we're going to kind of end. How do I get through a contraction or a recession today. We're going to start talking about, well, what do you do when it's over? And this is a way of strengthening your business. Now, what you need to do is you need to go to the website network, IBGR, like any other radio station, the International Business Growth Radio.network. It is our URL. It's a broadcast frequency. When you get to the website, IBGR.network, you'll see a navigation bar. Go all the way over to the right, see resources, mouse over, and you'll see show notes. Please click that. Now, you got one more step. Once you get there, you're just looking at some of the shows in the queue. If you will scroll down, and you'll see archives, and then you'll see categories, go to season 12, customers, and click that. And when you do, what you'll see are all shows that we have done to date on how do you hold your best accounts. So let me take you through where we started with this. And it's going to be really quick because I don't want to waste time on things we've done. But our first show, season 12, S12, E9 through 12, was nothing more than understanding is that all customer service, and by the way, customer service is not a random act of kindness. Customer service is, in fact, upselling. So I don't see customer service separate from sales. And if you have that mindset, you're going to give great service. Why? Because you're going to want to sell more. All right. So you're not doing this as some sort of morality play. But it's got to be based on data. So what we talked about there is what data do you have? How do you organize it? And in fact, if you've organized it correctly, what are you missing? All right. And then we went and we did our second show. And that was season 12, episodes 21 through 24 on the promise gap. And the issue here is quite simple. If you don't deliver on promise, you're really in serious trouble. So the first place you're going to look at, and now we talk a lot about that on the Tuesday show around operations or becoming the lowest cost producer, is how do you make sure that you deliver on the promises that you make? And if you do that, then more than likely you're going to do well with your customers. But none of us are perfect. None of us are running perfect businesses. And if you're a small business owner, more than likely you're already stretched to the limit in terms of what you and your resources can do. So there's going to be mistakes. So that takes us up to the third show that we did. And that was season 12, S12, episodes 33 through 36. And this one was the power of recovery and having good people. Now, the power of recovery is the companies that have the best service reputations, they have two characteristics that make them the best. Number one is that they're pretty damn good on delivering on promise, because not only is the promise of what you produce, it's also the promises that you make in marketing and sales. And a lot of times what we do to sell something is we oversell it. And then the customer is going to be unhappy because you're not going to deliver what you told them you're going to do. So the power of recovery is that, okay, let's say you've got that together in terms of you deliver what you promise and you do it 90 to 95% of the time. Then what happens when you fail to do it because you don't run a perfect company? And that is, how do I do recovery? And who I use to do that is really critical. But I was just building the game plan for the next show. And then what we did was, and that was one we did 2 weeks ago, and that was season 12, episodes 57 through 60. And these are all podcasts, and they're in the show notes if you open them up. And that is talking specifically about people. And then last week, and by the way, I'm going to come back to this because when we come back from the break, or in fact, we're going to start here before we go to the break. And then when you come up to the top one on the list, season 12 episode or podcast 69 through 72. All right. And then is, okay, now you've done what you can do. Let's take it to the next level. So you're in the transition of not only improving the relationship you have with the customer during an economic recession or contraction, but you're now beginning to build a totally different relationship with them. And we're going to cover those two today. So now if you'll scroll back down and look at season 12, episodes 57 through 60, and click that and open it up, you'll see the body of the notes. Now, by the way, if you're just picking this up live on the air, or you are just picking it up as a podcast, go to ibgr.network. When you get to our webpage, you'll see resources on the navigation bar at the top of the page, off to the right. Mouse over it, you see show notes. Click it, and then after you click the show notes, scroll down on the right-hand side under categories, and you'll see season 12 customers, and open that up. All right. So we are on season 12, episode 57 through 60. Holding Your Best Accounts is the name of the track 3 for customers. And this is the personnel gap, which has to do with who you put in front of people. All right, so I'm just going to start this in this particular time because about 2 minutes we have to get out. All right, so here's some things. Did you know to your customers, your frontline or customer-facing employees of the company? In other words, they typically don't deal with the owner unless it's just a couple people. So if you got an organization that's got 10, 12, 15 people in it or more, the customer-facing or the front line, depending on how you want to define them, are the people that the customer deals with most of the time, and therefore they are the company. Now ponder that, especially in terms of what you pay them. Number two, and this is a killer here, is that the front line doesn't lie. It will tell the truth about your faults. Now I'm going to expand upon that when we come back from the break. But what I mean by this is you think about the people who work in customer service. They didn't do it. It isn't their fault, and they're getting hammered. And in fact, if you have an organization that's not set up to deal with customers, then the front line finds themselves hung out to dry. And when they do that, they agree with the customers to reduce their stress level and they start bad mouthing the company. It'll kill you. And then finally, and this is the last one, what we're going to talk about at length here shortly, is how you treat the front line is how they treat customers. All right, just ponder that one for a minute. That's how they deal with the customer. All right, so this is our third segment, and building and maintaining an effective customer relationship is having the right people with the right personal characteristics with sufficient authority to solve problems. Now, let me put that together for you. Is that the issue here is if they can't fix it, and we talked about this when we did the recovery one, so I'm just doing a review. In order for recovery to work for you, the customer has to feel like they won at the end of the transaction. Okay? They have to feel like they won at the end of the transaction. Now, what you need are fairly, I guess the right word would be fairly intelligent people, but intelligent in terms of they understand the game that you are playing. They understand the dynamics of the company. And the reason that is critical is that you want them to make good real time decisions because the next part of this is that if they have to boot this up to management, you're going to lose the effectiveness of the recovery. It has to happen there on the spot. So those individuals has to have sufficient authority to solve the problem. But of course, I know what your pushback is. It's the same one I would make. And that is, how do I protect the financial health of the company? Because I don't want to allow employees to give stuff away. Well, we'll talk about that a little bit more in length. But fundamentally, they have to be provided a solution space that says, look, any decision that you make is within this box, do it. If it's outside that box, then you got to boot it up and make that box big enough that it's going to cover 90% of the problems. Because a lot of times, the solution in the recovery, the thing that makes the customer feel like they won, is not a financial issue. Now, if you don't solve it on the spot and you got to boot it up in the management, here's my guarantee. It'll lose its effect and it's going to cost you a hell of a lot more money. Okay. And so that is a big part of it. And then, of course, in their interactions, they need to be somewhat empathetic in this because it's a very emotionally charged situation, which we're going to talk about when we come back from the break. And that is you deal with the emotion first and then move on to the solution. Okay, so my timer is telling me that I need to be out of here. So I'm going to play a little background music as my cue. And you are listening to IBGR, the International Business Growth Radio Network. My name is William Eastman. And don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. All right, so for all of you that are currently now staying with me on LinkedIn, Facebook, or whatever, I'm just going to put this on for a second, see what we take the volume down on that a little bit. All right. So the big thing here is that customer service based company is so much more difficult to run uh, than a. All right, let me see here. Here we go. James Bryant, great guy. All right, here's the issue. Here's the issue that that you encounter here on this whole recovery and personnel thing is that, we typically do not vet customer service people that well. And what I mean by not vetting them that well is that, it's a basic job. We pay them the minimum wage that we can get away with, and then we really do not make them part of the business. And if they are not part of the business and they don't understand how you make money, how do they protect the financial health of the company? So one thing is we have people not basically have a lot of business expertise, so they can't figure that out because they don't have prior experience to pull from, because more than likely they've been treated this way in other companies. So you've got to bring their business acumen up to the point where they understand how you make money so that they can make quality decisions. And then the other part of that is that you just got to be willing to go with it in terms of giving them the autonomy to make those decisions, which we'll get back into. But that's a big one. And if you can master delivering on promise between not over-promising and marketing and sales, as well as having a good recovery when you don't deliver on promise, you're going to have a superior company in terms of its service reputation. All right. And then the other part of this is how to help them deal with this. And when we come back from the break, I don't want to go too far here, then repeat it to you. What I want to do is when we come back, I want to be able to talk about that at length. Okay. And so let me see where we are here. We should be still in commercial. Oh, all right. There we are. We've just started back. Let's start the music. Welcome to IBGR, the International Business Growth Radio. My name is William. Today's track customer service really not on customer service. It's on sales, but we're talking about the customer service component of sales. And this is part of our series on winning in difficult times, which means when the economy gets bad and it's not your fault, but you can only control the controllables. What do you do about it? 3-track system. Mondays, we talk about how to get on top of your numbers, so that on Tuesdays, when we talk about how to become the lowest cost producer, and notice I said producer and not price, you become the lowest cost producer. Now you're changing your cost line and you're bringing your costs down. And now on Wednesday, today, when we're doing this one, track 3 is holding your best accounts. Is that now how do I use that to my advantage with my best accounts and hold them? Because getting new customers in is going to be difficult in a contraction. Now, that doesn't mean for everybody, but I'm just simply saying to you, if your strategy to hold revenue during an economic downturn is to get new accounts, good luck with that one. All right, you need to go to the website, ibgr.network. That's IBGR. IBGR is our call sign. IBGR.network is our name, our URL, and our broadcast frequency. When you get to the website, here's what you do. You see the resource bar at the top, all the way to the right. Mouse over it. Okay, when you mouse over it, you see show notes. Click it. And unfortunately, there's one more step. After you click it, scroll down on the right-hand side, scroll down the page. You'll see categories, go down to Season 12 Customers, and click it. And now we're rocking and rolling. All right, so we are, and you should open up S12, Season 12, episode or podcast 57 through 60, and go there. And so, and by the way, the links for the podcast is there. All right, so now we talked about this issue of putting people in front of your customers who understand your business well enough and that they have sufficient autonomy to make decisions on the spot. The only way you're going to get a bang for your buck on recovery is if it's fixed immediately. Okay. So now what has to happen? Well, there has to be the customer contact process. The person doing it has to have intimate knowledge of how you're getting things done in your organization. That's number one. Number two is they have to understand how the customer uses your offer and what results they expect. That's why for me, if I was working as a consultant, I would never have customer service in a separate division or department than marketing and sales. I'd have the three of them together because the salespeople must know how the customer is going to use the product or service, because then they can't sell the damn thing. And so that way your salespeople are being trained. I mean, your customer service people are being trained. All right. Number 3 is they have the authority to fix it. And then number 4 is they demonstrate empathy when dealing with unhappy customers. All right. So now, access to customer knowledge. This would be podcast or episode number 58. And this is our second segment today, is that everybody in the organization who deals with customers, and in fact, even people on the production side, need to understand and have access to what the customers want and are doing. Okay. This is really critical. This has to be data that is shared throughout the organization, because you cannot make a good business decision, regardless of where you are, if you don't know what the customer wants, what they're using, and something about their business. Now, number 1 is understanding the customer's need. And the customer need is that you basically put it into 2 categories. I'll make this simple, because really it is. It gets complex from here. In the B2B world, where you're selling to other businesses, ultimately your offer, your product, your service must impact their competitive advantage or their unique selling proposition, however you want to say it. But they're buying from you because somehow you make them better so they can get more business. You got to know that. Or number 2, if you're in a business where you're selling to consumers, then understand that all consumer choices are lifestyle based. Now, this one is, and both of these are complicated once you get beyond those 2 statements for different reasons. Let me go to the lifestyle. In the lifestyle, understand that whatever people buy, unless it's a real commodity like toilet paper, is that they're making 2 statements. They're making a statement, number 1, about themselves, and they're making a statement, number 2, about themselves in front of other people. When people buy clothes, number 1 is how does it look on them to them? And then number 2, when they wear those clothes outside, what message are they sending about themselves? Okay, it's kind of like a branding thing. And so it's the same with cars. I mean, you drive a beat or a junk car, not a all rusted out a rust bucket, but you drive an older car. Why? Well, it tells you that you've got more of a you're more of a utility type person, and that's the message you send out there. You buy a Ferrari, what are you saying? You buy a hybrid, what are you saying? You buy an EV, what are you saying? So I have to understand that. So when we make the customer knowledge available to everybody in the process, what's the competitive advantage that our product and service gives the customer? Everybody has to know that, because if I'm going to solve a problem, then I have to know how to solve that problem. The same with lifestyle. Okay. The second thing they have to have access to, and by the way, any good CRM, customer relationship management system, is going to have this data, because you can get in on the admin side, on the back side of it. And what you can do when you get on the admin side is that you can put in special fields for the information you need to contain. All right, number 2 is the customer's history. What they have to do in order to pull this off is they have to know when was the purchase made and who sold it, just in case they got to backtrack to say, I got a difficult client here, or we got a problem. Tell me what happened. And then number 2 is what additional purchases or other things that they have purchased from us. So I have a complete picture, because if you don't, they're going to throw it back at you and say, look, we spent $100,000 with you last year, and we bought this, this, and this, and this. Well, a lot of times customers will inflate that, and you don't necessarily attack them, but you also go, you know what they purchased, okay? And then finally, what happened to create this event? In other words, if I got a disgruntled customer, it's in my best interest as the frontline employee, as well as the company, that I understand what mitigated this situation. So that's the data that any good CRM should have, as well as my ability to walk over to somebody else or text them or call them on the phone. All right. Now I'm going to move on down to episode of podcast number 59 here. Empathy, sincerity, that they value your business, because we talked about recovery. I'm going to put that aside. Now what this is all about is, what does the person do? And I did a lot of training here. And one of the things that I learned quickly is that if you're going to make your customer service training, smile training, it is the ultimate insult to the people on the front line. They all know how to be polite. Now, some are better than others, but basically, this isn't the problem. The issue is they've got to be able to triage the situation. And so you're going to run into the situation and basically, is this complex or is this simple? Is this highly emotional? Is it rational? In other words, they're hitting you with, and they're running through the story, and they tell you 10 things, and they're really heated. Well, you've got a complex and emotional problem to solve, which is the most difficult to do. So what you want to do as you hear this is that you want to pick up the pieces that go, well, where do I start? Well, the second bullet here is you start with the emotional part of it first. If they're emotional, don't try to stop them, because if you try to stop them, it's just going to make them madder or going to make it more emotional. Okay. Let it run its course and summarize to demonstrate what they heard. So you're taking notes here, whether you're writing them down, you're putting them in the CRM, doesn't matter where they go. You got written notes, and let the emotion go, because if you stop emotion, you're going to get more. Let it vent, let them vent and get it off of their plate. Then you come back and you summarize what you heard. And one of the great ways to convey empathy or sincerity to people is to make it clear to them that they have been understood. I mean, most of you know there's an old rule in communications: understand before trying to be understood. In other words, understand what you're hearing, then try to get them to understand what you want to offer to them. And if they're emotional, you're not getting there. So let it run, summarize, and demonstrate that you heard them, because this is going to be the first part of demonstrating empathy or sincerity to them. All right. Now that you wrote this out, let's go through the story again. And once you've got the emotion out, say, okay, help me out here. I understand that this is really hurt your, and I'm going to take a B2B example. This has really hurt your business. I understand why you're irate. Yes, we should have done that. Okay. So now let's figure out what we need to do. So let's start over, and let's take this story from beginning to end. What happened first, and then just go step by step by step to get the total picture, and summarize at the end that you understand the problem. I can guarantee that this process works with the vast majority of humanity. If it doesn't, then you got a game player on the other end, and then you maybe have a different decision that you need to make about dealing with them. There's a lot of people who get irate on purpose because they think that they can hose you down for more money or for a freebie or something like that. Okay. So emotion first, complexity second, and that'll work out for you. Now I'm going down to episode 60, or podcast number 60. And I believe that's the last one on this. And by the way, we did this 2 weeks ago. And if you just picked this up for whatever reason, go to ibgr.network. When you get there, go to resources, mouse over that. Show notes. When you open up show notes, go down on the side to categories that open up season 12 customers, and it'll have you there. All right. So once you discharge the emotion, it's now time to move on to problem solving. You can't problem solve as long as there's emotion involved in this. Now, I'm not saying it will not come back up, but at least now you have a handle on what's going on. So you summarize the situation to demonstrate you understand them. Then you ask the question, what would it take to make you whole? All right. And this also helps to move them from being emotional to rational, because when you ask somebody a question, they can't be emotional about it. You're asking a distinct question to say, okay, how do we make this whole for you? And now the other reason that you want to ask this here is that you want to get a handle on what may be the financial impact of this. All right. Because this person has probably been given to you some box, as we talked earlier, some solution space that they've got to operate within so that they can give the right decision. Okay. All right. And so if in fact what they want you can do it. Done. If it's not something you can do, then think through and offer an alternative solution, okay, to see if that in fact won't take care of it, because they don't know all the things that you can do for them. All right. And then if that's not enough, what else can you do to fix it? All right. And keep at it until you get the customer going, okay, that they won, and you want to keep it from management as much as you possibly can. Okay, I need to be out again. That's just how it goes. And I'm my own studio engineer. So you're listening to IBGR, the International Business Growth Radio Network. My name is William Eastman, and you are listening to Track 3 on customer service. We'll be right back. Oh yeah, too many moving parts here for all my friends listening. I guess if you're on Facebook, link, Twitter, you're watching this. Let's see where we are. All right, there we go. Okay, so we're now into what the hell time is it? Yeah, we're now two through, and then we'll when we come back from this break, what I'll do is I'll just pick up the pieces on this one and then move on to the last one we're going to talk about today. And of course, if you've got any questions whatsoever on either on Facebook or on LinkedIn or on YouTube, go ahead and put them in. They're going to pop up on my screen. We're using StreamYard. I really like this as a platform, and I can answer it. Now, I'll either answer it immediately if it's like right where I'm at, or I'm in between something, or if it's a good one and I'm going to get to it in 2 or 3 minutes, then I'll kind of weave my way through that. It's kind of my journey to get to the answer. But so, so for everybody out there who is watching on social media, yeah, we're pretty much done with this one. And this is going to be the transition piece. And what I mean by the transition piece is that you do all of this and that you will improve the relationship you have with all of your accounts. But since we're focusing on your best accounts, do it here. Now, some of the things that we cover in the second track, if you haven't looked at track 2 or listened to that or watched it on operations, and this one is lowest cost producer, one of the things that we've been doing over there is looking at how to cut cost so that on the same amount of revenue, we get a better margin. So if revenue goes down, okay, then more than likely we might wind up with less revenue, but with a better margin. Now, if you take a look at it, it's not how much money your company takes in; it's how much money your company keeps. So you could have a bad revenue year, but not necessarily a bad year in terms of profitability. And so on Tuesdays, we talk a lot about this, but also here's where, if you're making improvements, because the lowest cost producer is nothing more than taking a look at what we're doing, can we do it better? I don't want to go any further, and I think here we go. We're going to be back for the third segment. Welcome back. You're listening to IBGR, the International Business Growth Radio Network. My name is William Eastman. I'm a host for today's show. This is a series of 3 tracks we've got. We're talking about winning in difficult times, which has to do with how do you win in business during a contraction or a recession. This is track 3. Track 3 is where we talk about holding your best accounts, your customers. Track 1, which we do on Mondays, is knowing your numbers. Track 2 is then, in fact, if I know my numbers, track 2 is how do I become the lowest cost producer, not price, but bringing my costs down so I can get better margins. And then on Wednesdays, now we're talking about the revenue side and how can we improve or hold the revenue that we have. All right, you need to go to the website, IBGR, our call sign, International Business Growth Rate, heard in 183 countries. IBGR.network is our name, our URL, and our broadcast frequency. When you get to the website, go over to resources, mouse over, see show notes, click it. And then when you get there, you got another step, unfortunately. Scroll on down, and then you'll, under categories, you'll see season 12 customers. Click that. And that where we are on that one, we are in S12 episodes or podcasts 57 through 60. Personnel gap with that. If you click it, because I've got a few things to say to clean up before we move on to the last one. And again, these are reviews. We did these shows already. I'm simply doing them here with video to test this out. This is a soft launch of a new service we're going to be offering next season. And you're going to see quite a few of our hosts on the air live and through social media and YouTube. Okay. So where we were is episode 60 or podcast 60. And we talked about how you convey to the customer in a highly charged situation that you care and offer a solution. And so the last bullet I have under topics, I'm number 4. If it's not enough, what else can you do to fix it? Well, we'll keep it, what will it take to make the feel the customer one? Okay. And you want to keep it away from management if you possibly can. In other words, keep engaging the customer from a rational approach to get them to help you problem solve. You can't problem solve this on your own because there'll be a tendency for you than to give away things you didn't have to give away. Now, I'm not saying you don't give away, maybe you say, I'll give you 10% off the next purchase, or you won't have to pay the shipping cost on this. We'll reimburse you for that, or something of that nature. But typically what happens is that the first thing you look for is, how do I give them a discount or something that costs money? And this is a process to see if we can't figure out how to do it without spending any money, because recovery becomes expensive, especially if you do too much of it. All right, so now if you will just refresh your page back to season 12 customers, here we are. Season 12 episodes or podcast 57 through 6. Wrong one. That's the one I just did. Season 12, episodes 69 through 72, Inside the Customer. All right. Now, if you open that one up, let's rock and roll. Now, this one is the transition to take your customer service to a new level. Really, two things are happening here. Number one is you are going to become a different type of resource to your best customers, right? And I'll define that a little bit better later. But I want you to hear that that's exactly what the next step is. Number two is, as this contraction or recession ends, one of the things that we know, all right, is that the most money is made in the early stages of an expansion, all right? So this is your best opportunity to position the business so when the economy gets better and people start buying, guess what? You're going to be positioned like none of your competitors, unless they've done the same thing you've done. Second thing here is that if you look at what an economic contraction is, let's get out of what stupid stuff the governments do. All governments are stupid for the most part when it comes to this. But in a business cycle, when you have a contraction or a recession, the idea is it's cleaning out bad investments in poorly run companies. So what's going to happen here? Bad investments meaning you invested in doing something in your business that didn't turn out to make any money. Here's the time where you drop it. You go, we ain't going to do that anymore. But also poorly run companies. So when a recession is over, some of your competitors are gone. Well, there's customers there for you because they're going to be looking for somebody. Why isn't it you? Also, the competitors that remain, if they haven't done what we're talking about, they're not doing very well either. And so you got an opportunity to pick up orphans from companies that are now defunct, as well as take customers from your competitors who are not necessarily well positioned. And that means being first, you get to jump on the competition. Now, that is that's a transition piece. And I want you to keep that in mind, that is the long game. All right, so this is really about starting with taking your customer relationship to the next level. Your company, if you've done what we're talking about here, as well as the things that you've been doing in the past, you have specific areas of competence that the customer might not possess, and provides an opportunity to share and help them to learn from your experience. So, for example, here's two things that I recommend you can probably help your customers with. Number one is you've gone through the process that we talk about in track 2. All right. And by the way, this is episode or podcast 69, and you can see the link there on the page. So it'll take you right to the podcast or the show that we did last week. But what is going to happen here is, if you've gone through this becoming the lowest cost producer, and you've brought down your cost while improving your service or product quality, because that's part of what you would be doing in that process, what customer is not interested in reducing their cost and improving their either product quality or service quality? I don't know anybody that's not. That's one piece of expertise to share. Number two is, what are you doing here? Well, you're trying to improve your relationship with your customer by improving their perception of what you're currently doing. You're delivering on promise more often, you're recovering better, and you're putting better people in front of them. So the whole experience of doing business with you is gone up. Now, what customer out there couldn't learn something from those two things? And then besides, if you're a tech company and you got a customer that is not savvy in tech, bring that core competence over. In other words, use your ability to improve the customer's business during the recession. Think about what's going to happen if they allow you to help them. And that's why we call this inside the customer. All right. So every company has to develop some core competencies to become successful. And those are specific to the market and to the industry. It doesn't mean that everybody is good at everything. I mean, like us, we're good at some things and we're not good at other things. And we have partners, companies that we work with to pick up the slack on this. Okay. All right. So there is an exact formula for moving to the next stage of the relationship, but some conditions are present. It's a matter of timing. All right. So number one is, do you have as much of their budget as possible for your suite of products and services? That's a good question, because if you don't have as much of their budget as possible, then maybe that's something to focus in on. Number two, are they satisfied with your offer and the nature of the relationship? Okay. Um, those are two things we should have covered up till now. Number three, you have observed or been made aware of your areas of competence that will help them. In other words, if you are really tightly tied to the customer and you know all the things that we talked about from your database of what you collected on the customer, you probably spotted areas where they could improve that you can help. And then number four, in order to do that, is you've got to have a positive relationship with the key decision makers. Now, if you're selling other small businesses and you're talking to the owner, you're there. But if you're talking to salespeople, or you're talking to somebody in contracting or invoicing, or somebody from production or customer services calling you because of what you're doing with them, then you need to boot this up. Now, here's some things to do. There's a little extra work for you, but you want to do this not only for yourself, but if you do it for yourself, you can turn it into a marketable product and service. It's both. So the first thing you want to do, from all the things that we discussed, is you want to analyze and create a report on your relationship with them. In other words, where you were, where you've been, because if you've been following our process, what have you done? You've improved your production process or your service delivery process to where you're basically delivering on promise more often. They're happier with you. Your recovery is better, et cetera, et cetera. You want to document that for yourself so that next time you're in a situation like this, you can go, what did we do last time to improve on it? And have we slipped, or do we need to do something else? But also that report becomes something you can share with them. All right. So of that, what have you observed that you could share with the customer that they would benefit from? And then the conversation is, how can we start helping you? Now, do you charge them any money for this? You do this for free? I don't know. I simply don't know. You've got to ask yourself that same question. If you can afford to do it for free, then do it for free. If you can't afford to do it for free, then do as much as you possibly can for free. Because really think about this philosophically. What are you doing? You're helping them stay in business. If you help them stay in business, what's going to happen here? They're going to keep buying from you. You see, what you're doing here, you're just not being a good person. You're not being a good corporate citizen. It's more than that. You're protecting your investment. You've put a lot of time and energy into this account. And even though you have been remunerated for that, you've been rewarded, still you want to hold this account. And this is really the secret now, is that everything you did up till here is improve the relationship. This is the next level move. And I can tell you from personal experience, I haven't had a business owner turn down this help. Now, I didn't say that they wouldn't turn it down. You say, look, and it's going to cost you X number of dollars. But if you wrote that report and it's all the things that you did to improve your business, so it's all documented, and then from the observations you have with the company, with their company, all the things that you think that they could improve in order to stay in business themselves, I don't know a business owner who's going to throw you out of the room with that conversation. You're going to intrigue them, because guess what happened? You have just changed the nature of the relationship. You are not a vendor. You're starting to act like a partner. All right. So when we come back from our last break, we're going to get into podcaster episodes 70, 71, and 72 about how to pull that off. So I think it's time for some music. Or listening to IBGR, the International Business Growth Radio Network. My name is William Eastman. We are on our customer track today. The series is called Winning in Difficult Times. This track is called Holding Your Best Accounts, and what we're doing is a review of the last couple weeks of what we've done here live in Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Okay, for those people listening, watching, listening, I used to be in radio here, and so let me check here. Here I got I got to still be doing here. Uh, it's David Wilson, one of our premier players, and that's his commercial. By the way, let me just say to you is that if you're interested in being a host, we've got some killer stuff going on, or being a sponsor. But let me talk about a host. I said it earlier. What is a host? A host is a business owner who is either current or was a business owner who is a subject matter expert. And what do they do when they get on the air? They're doing two things. They're doing exactly what we're talking about here, is that they're sharing their expertise to help the business owners or consumers that they're selling to improve what they're doing. And number two is that they are promoting their business. Now, if you're a host with us, here's what happens. And by the way, here's one of our partners on the commercial. If you're, oh, that's right, you wouldn't be hearing it because I have to turn it on. That's a Ben Goya. Okay. And so what happens here if you become a host is that we're really, for host, we become your marketing agency. All right. A marketing agency. For less than you could hire a marketing agency, and you're on our international network, heard in 183 countries. Our shows and podcasts are over 450,000 downloads. Imagine that type of coverage for your business. Just imagine it for a second. All right. And so what happens when you come on the air here? We'll show you how to do a professional radio show while at the same time doing professional podcasting, as well as taking your show notes and either organizing it to turn it into great marketing collateral. What we say here is in 90 days, you get a year's worth of marketing. Or number two, turn it into an ebook. And that's what Ben does. And he's one of our partners. So everything you do is kind of orchestrated around that. Okay, I need to shift over here to see where we are on time. We should be on the end. All right, time for your music. Here we go. And we're back for our last segment today. You're listening to IBGR, the International Business Growth Radio Network. That's our call sign, like any other radio station. IBGR.network is our name. It is our URL, and it's our broadcast frequency. You need to get to the website, and then I'll tell you what's going on. Get to the website, IBGR.network. When you get there, navigation bar at the top, resources, mouse over, show notes, click it. All right, you want to be in show notes. And then, even though this is at the top of the queue, we're talking about all the shows that we've done this season in this track. On the right-hand side, scroll down the page. You'll see categories. When you come to season 12, customers, click it. And what you'll see are 5 sets of show notes, 5 shows. And the one that you want to close this conversation out is S12, which is episode 12. And that's show 12, season 12. Man, get this right, Bill. Episode 69 through 72. This track is called Holding Your Best Customers. And this show is Inside the Customer. And if you'll scroll down, where are we? We are at episode 70 or podcast 70. All right. What does the customer data tell you about the relationships? Okay. All right. So here's what you do. Here's where you start. All right. Your data will tell them where you stand on the promise gap and what you've done. Then the question to them is, where are they on their promise gap? What does marketing and sales say to their customers? And then how well are they delivering? More than likely, if you're dealing with a smaller business, they don't have the data. So so what you have to offer to them to improve their business is how to do it, right? You know how to do it because you've done it. Second gap is on recovery. How well are they doing it when they screw up and they don't deliver on promise? How well are they recovering? And this is really a 2-part question. First part of the question is, does the customer feel like they won in most of these recoveries, number one. And if you're not collecting the data, you should be. And then number two is that, and this is an internal number, what is it costing you to recover? See, that's your cost of quality. All right. So that is actually added to your production cost. Yeah. And if this was Monday and we're doing finance, getting or owning your numbers, we would get in that conversation. The third gap is what's their impression of the people that they put in front of their customers. What are their customers saying about their personnel? And we gave you all the tools that you need to help them out. Now, the next three is we're going to kind of route back to the promise gap, predominantly the promise gap. And that is help them say, okay, when customer purchase from you, this is your customer, you're helping with their customers. What expectations do they have for the results? What will it do for them? Now, this one is a little bit easier to do because most people can tell you that, because after all, that's the feature benefit that you're doing in the sale. The next one is a little bit different, and that is how user-friendly is the product or service that they have purchased from you. And you'll find maybe half or less than half of the companies out there that you are dealing with understand this, and they're collecting that data. If they're not, you know how to help them collect the data because we've covered it. And then finally, the third one is much more macro or strategic, is that overall, what is it like doing business with you? Now, once you've identified all that, and you have done that, that's what we've been talking about. That's why this is the 5th show in the series. This is week 7, so we're about halfway through a 13-week season. This is show 5 of that, and so you should be able to do that for yourself. In fact, this is the report that you're going to be handing them, and you say, we can help you. We'll show you how to do this. Now, what does your customer think of you, the business that you're selling to? This is definitely a B2B sale. Not so much a B to consumer. That one's a little bit different. The bottom 3 works with consumer sales. The top 3 don't. All right, for the most part, because they're not reselling to anybody. All right, so now, how do you do this? Well, you've told them how to do it. You've showed them, you've told them how to do it, and you can basically provide assistance. Now, we said this in the last segment that we did here live, when I said that, do you charge for it? And I would say, as much as you possibly can, do it for free. Now, doing it for free could be you give them the report, and maybe you send a couple of your people over to them to do a training session. Now, do you spend a lot of money? No, you don't. Okay, because we're in a recession. That's why we have the context of these shows. You don't have a lot of money to give away, or time, in this particular case, personnel. So go as far as you can go for free. What you'll do to the relationship, you take it another level, as we talked about prior, is that they're going to think of you radically different than anybody else. All right, let's scroll down to episode or podcast 71, which is the last one we're going to cover today. And that is, how do your core competence match customers? Now, what we talked about before is their relationship with their customers. Now we're going to be taking more of a internal, not entirely, but an internal view. So number one is, what did you do? And we talk about this all in track 1 on Mondays on owning your numbers, is what was the impact on your financials as you did some of this? So for example, when you went to lowest cost producer, how did that change your financials, which is our Tuesday track 2 on lowest cost producer? How did you do that? Number 3 is, you've improved the relationship with your customers. How did you do that? And then we go back to the first bullet to say, what has that done to your financial performance? Now, this is where you get them thinking about what they perhaps have to offer to the customers. So again, I'll reiterate here. What we did is we shared with them our core competence. Now, I don't know what type of company you run, and as I said earlier, let's say you're a tech company and you're dealing with a customer that doesn't understand tech. You certainly could offer some of that expertise. I'm confining it to what we've covered, is that Your core competence right now is you're better managed financially because you have a better handle on your processes, your cost, and your quality, and that you have substantially enhanced and improved your relationship with customers. Those are three core competencies that any company would die for. Share them. Now, the last one, discretionary performance, is something we haven't talked about before, but this is tapping into the change in your organization, especially with your frontline or customer facing employees, on their view of their role. Now, let me give you a handle on where this came from. Now, this research project hasn't been done probably in 20, 25 years. It was done for like 30 years, and the numbers never changed, so they stopped doing it. And it was a study that came out in the middle 1970s. That's how far back I'm going to go here. And it was called Putting the Work Ethic Back to Work. And here's the question that they ask employees: how hard do you have to work to keep your job? All right. So what that means is that when I come to work, how much of what I could do or could offer my employer do I give? Because what you're saying is you're getting to the low standard of, if I don't do this much, I'll lose my job. And when people are asked that question, historically the number has been between 30 and 40%. Now think about that for a second. You've got people coming to work who are giving you, let's take the top number. Let's be the most optimistic we can be. They come into work and they're giving you 40% of what they could do. Wouldn't it be wonderful to get that other 60% or another 20? And now it's called discretionary performance. That's the title that was given in the research. Is that whose discretion is it? You see, you can't beat it out of them. In other words, you can't punish people to get more performance beyond what your standards are. And you can't bribe them, because if you give them a pay raise, what happens? I know you've seen this, is their performance may go up for a pay period or two, but 6 months later, they're back performing at their previous levels. So increasing salary, pay raises to get performance doesn't work. There are other things that work, but this doesn't. And so you have now increased their knowledge of the business and given them more responsibility, which we talked about in the previous segments. Guess how they feel about the company, and guess how much more discretionary performance you're getting. You see, this is the other added payoff that you could share with the other business owners, because you see, business owners are always afraid of, if I give up too much authority, am I not in fact allowing the inmates to run the asylum? Okay, that's a standard joke. I mean, most business owners go there when you say, well, what I want to do is empower them. Okay. Um, and what you can do is alleviate their fears, is that, yeah, you'll get a couple bad apples, but for the most part, we have seen nothing but gains. Now, finally, the last one, you scroll down to the last one, episode 72, where to start and how to start. Okay. So here's my wrap up of everything we've done in the 7 weeks. Start with improving your relationship with everything that we have, everything that we've talked about, all 5 shows, and we got shows coming that's going to build on that. Review all the customer data that you have, okay, and add some of it. If there's things you can't say or recommendations you can't make, add that data to the database, because that's telling you it's something you should be collecting. Number 3, create a report on improvement recommendations. And what you do here is you take what you did in your company and you share that with them, plus observations that you have about their company, because actually, you being an outsider have a perspective that they probably don't have. Number 4, arrange a meeting with the owner on neutral ground, not your office, not their office. Maybe take them to lunch or do something with them, but arrange a meeting and then provide the report and make an offer to help, to say, look, you're a valued customer with us. We want to help you get through this bad economic times. We've been very successful and you've experienced it on improving our business. Would you like us to help you? And then there you are. You're downtown with them. All right. So I greatly appreciate you listening. Where have you been listening to? Um, this is IBGR, the International Business Growth Radio Network. This is our challenge webinar series where I go live on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube to talk about what we've been doing, giving you an opportunity to ask your questions. I didn't get any questions today. However, I am happy with how the show went. So now next week we will be back doing our regular show. But if you'd like, next Monday we will be back here and we'll be talking about what we've done in finance. Have yourself a great business day. Thank you for listening. All right, that's it. And by the way, Hugh's on. Thank you, Hugh. Hey, Hugh, on since you're still here, hopefully you're still here. Hugh, have you guys looked at the challenge sales model? I came across this the other day, and it's not new. But what we were doing is I was my sales hero besides Hugh Hornsby here. He's vice president of sales at a major company, and Hugh knows what he's doing when it comes to sales management. But both of us were followers or devotees of Neil Rackman and his spin model for selling. And then I came across a book just recently on challenge selling, and it was a great synthesis of how to how it's a great synthesis of consulting based selling, only taking it to the next level, and it really has changed what we're doing here. And so anyway, and I see Hugh said yes, that in fact he has read the book. So I've actually we've changed some of our CRM in terms of phases to collect that, because what you want to do is you want to challenge people. All right, for all of you who've been watching, I greatly appreciate it. You got plenty of opportunities to leave me comments. I am here to do it. And as I said, next week we're going to be on knowing your numbers, and we're going to be reviewing the last 8 weeks of what we've done in the financial track. So everybody have themselves a great business day. Thanks for listening. And this is Eastman out.